Whether it's having to follow strict moose regulations, organizing a festival to commemorate river ice breaking, or living with more sled dogs than people, there's a lot of seemingly unbelievable facts about living in Alaska. So, here are 50 more unbelievable facts about what life in Alaska is really like. Fact number 50. You can't whisper in someone's ear when they're moose hunting. Why you'd want to startle someone carrying a gun big enough to bring down a moose is anyone's guess. But just in case you were planning on testing Darwin's theory of natural selection out, you should know that in addition to being a bad idea, it's illegal. If someone has their sights locked on a 1,300-pound, 590-kilogram animal, the last thing you want to do is break their focus. If that animal notices you're there and decides to charge you first, let's just say it's a terrible survival strategy. Number 49. You also can't push a moose from a plane. Again, we have to wonder what situations Alaskans are finding themselves in that made such legislation necessary. However, there's a lot of moose-specific legislation that makes sense, even if it sounds silly at first glance, like not being allowed to see moose from an airplane. What the law actually wants to prevent is hunters using planes to spot a moose and kill it. Hunters can only check for moose the day before to give the animal a chance to move and a fair fighting chance against being killed. Fact number 48. In Alaska, you can visit the place where Santa's letters are sent. The town of North Pole, Alaska is a community of 1,600 people about a 15-minute drive south of Fairbanks that receives tens of thousands of letters for Santa Claus from children all over the world. Volunteers actually answer a lot of the letters, at least those that arrive with a return address, and include a postmark from the North Pole. The town lives up to its Christmassy reputation in other ways as well, with a Santa Claus house featured as a tourist attraction. Don't expect Alaska to live up to this efficiency when you try to get other things sent through, though. Because, fact number 47, shipping costs will become the bane of your existence. If you can even get the product or piece of furniture you want up to Alaska, be prepared to pay through the nose for it. Anderson Trucking Service estimates, based on their experience, that shipping to Alaska is 3 to 5 times more expensive than shipping to the lower 48. Number 46. In Alaska, it's either winter season or roadwork season. You never really get a great driving experience as part of your daily life. You're either battling snowstorms behind the wheel of your truck or waiting for the weather to clear, only to run headfirst into road construction. Those rare weeks when it's not snowing, pouring rain, or cold enough to freeze your eyelashes, that's the only time crews can work. So good luck driving anywhere without delays. Fact number 45. You're prepared for snow. But are you prepared for rain? Forget Washington. Alaska is actually the 5th rainiest state in the US, according to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA. Alaska gets around 20 inches, 51 centimeters of rain a year overall, but some parts of the state, like Ketchikan, get absolutely flooded with 150 inches, 381 centimeters of rain a year. The high levels of rain are caused by moist air from the ocean moving over the land and almost immediately being forced up by one of the state's many mountains. So in addition to snow boots, get a good raincoat. And speaking of gear, fact number 44. Many people have a pair of yak tracks in their car, if they're not actively wearing them out and about on snowy or icier days. This traction device is made up of steel coils and rubber bands and are meant to be put over the bottom of your shoes on days when the ground seems more like a slip and slide. Just be careful to take them off when conditions return to normal, as they will cause you to lose your balance on days with dry conditions. And days with dry conditions are no walk in the park either, because fact number 43, even if you've never had a moisturizing routine, living in Alaska might convince you it's time to start one. The air is so dry in the south, with the central heating systems constantly running inside homes making things even drier, that you might see your skin start to flake and crack, especially if you've moved from a humid climate. Fact number 42. Alaska has the most expensive healthcare in the US. Researchers at the Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation ranked Alaska first in the country after analyzing over 40 billion insurance claims during the 2010s and found that Alaska has the highest expenses at over $9,200 per capita. The high costs are due to a combination of factors, including the state's very difficult geography distances making transporting patients and supplies incredibly expensive. Also, the state has a low population, which means less competition among medical providers, driving prices up. And many Alaskans seem reluctant to seek preventative care, which we'll get to soon, leading to their hospital bills being way higher when they do seek medical attention. Fact number 41. Some remote communities in Alaska don't have a single local police officer to call. Over 70 Alaska villages, most if not all of them indigenous, don't have local police. Advocacy groups have been pressing the state to copy their health program to institute policing, as every single one of those villages does have a health clinic. The bad news is even the indigenous towns that have police officers usually don't have a native officer. While 95% of health aides are native, less than half of VPSOs, peace officers trained in law enforcement and medical assistance, are native. This can lead to some issues with distrust, communication breakdown, and occasionally racism. Unfortunately, rates of domestic violence and assault are very high in Alaska, and a relative lack of policing doesn't help matters. Fact number 40. Cancer is one of the state's leading causes of death, and yet 40% of women over age 40 had not received a mammogram in the past 2 years. 56.2% of adults between the ages of 50 and 75 had done no screenings for colorectal cancer. What's the reason for this? Well, doctors believe it's a combination of healthcare being geographically or financially inaccessible for many Alaskans. Couple that with a sense of rugged individualism many residents seem to have that leads them to turn to professionals less often than others. Fact number 39. People in Alaska really rely on each other, especially in smaller communities. The Alaska Housing Finance Corporation found that almost 75% of Alaska residents say they feel a strong sense of community in their area and know their neighbors well. That's compared to 51% of Americans in general who say they feel very or somewhat connected to their neighborhoods, according to the Survey Center on American Life in 2021. With housing, groceries, heating, and winter gear being so expensive, a lot of people in Alaska are really struggling to get by. You can lean on your neighbors for borrowing items here and there, even food if you need it, and be prepared to give back as well. Everyone understands that being left alone up here in the cold could quite literally kill you, and communities tend to prop each other up. Fact 38. Alaska attracts a lot of people for seasonal jobs in tourism and wildlife, or temporary jobs working at oil and gas sites and fishing. According to Alaska Business Magazine, Alaska has the highest number of seasonal workers in the nation. They give the example of 2017 employment, in which the Alaska Department of Labor noted that non-farm employment rose from 310,000 jobs in January to 353,100 jobs in July, an increase of 13.9% that happens annually. Between 5 to 7% of the population enters and or leaves the state for long periods of time each year. Number 37. In addition to Alaska being very far from the lower 48 states, flight times to the rest of the country are usually pretty strange. A lot of flights leave Anchorage and Fairbanks airports between 9 p.m. and 2 a.m., with a significant amount departing between midnight and 2 a.m. The stated reason by the airlines is so they can make West Coast and Midwest connections and get to the East Coast on the same day. Number 36. People living in Alaska often describe the experience as feeling like they're living in another country rather than another state of the U.S. Even direct flights to major U.S. cities take at least 5 hours, and, as previously mentioned, usually leave at very specific, inconvenient times in the middle of the night. Fact number 35. Alaska has the lowest tax burden of any U.S. state, according to both WalletHub and the Tax Foundation. There is no individual income tax on the state level and no statewide sales tax, though some communities do institute a small local sales tax. But this still makes the statewide sales tax rate average out at 1.82%. There is a property tax rate, but it averages out to an effective rate of 1.16%. Number 34, Alaska has the second lowest percentage of residents aged 65 and over. Even though the cost of living is relatively high, Alaska can be a great place to live in retirement, especially when you take into account the permanent fund dividend, which gives local citizens a yearly stipend from oil and gas profits. Not to mention the state's clean air. You won't believe just how clean in a moment, and absolutely stunning nature. Fact number 33, 90% of air quality monitoring sites in Alaska have moderate to good air quality, making Alaska a state with some of the cleanest air in the US. In fact, in 2023, it had the second best air quality index, AQI, in the country with a rating of 27.9, beat out by only Hawaii. However, you might face problems in the wintertime in cities like Fairbanks due to lots of people using wood fires to keep warm, or if you're near oil and gas extraction sites, making the air quality poorer in those places. But overall, thanks to Alaska's vast stretches of pristine forests and wilderness, residents will be able to breathe a little better up here than in most places. Fact 32. The state has an anti-degradation law which protects its waterways as well, and sets certain tests and standards before Alaska can decide to allow pollution in any body of water. That's why 99% of Alaska's waterways are rated as having exceptional water quality. 90% of surface waters are moderately clean to clean, according to the Alaska Department of Environmental Conservation. Fact 31. You can see the Northern Lights on average 243 days a year in Fairbanks. For locals, the Aurora Borealis is not a rare one-off sight, but rather a frequent occurrence they get to enjoy as a reward for enduring the long Alaskan winters. That's because the town is right under something called the auroral oval, which is where aurora activity is most intense, and Northern Lights season in Fairbanks runs from August 21st to April 21st. Fact number 30. Almost everyone in Alaska has blackout curtains, because they're extremely necessary, except in the winter. As harsh and dark as Alaskan winters are, and for some people they're really bad, as you'll soon find out, the summers can be even worse. The residents of Fairbanks get to experience the midnight sun, which is 70 straight days of sunlight from around May 17th to July 27th. Even people living in Anchorage and Juneau, which don't technically get a full 24 hours of the sun in the sky, still get 22 hours of direct sunlight. And when the sun dips below the horizon for a bit, things don't fully go dark. Fact number 29. In winter, seasonal affective disorder makes people's mental health problems really bad. Something about not seeing the sun for months on end and dealing with bitter cold days and cabin fever can affect even the hardiest residents. The suicide rate in Alaska is high, sometimes close to double the national average. In 2022, for example, the suicide rate in Alaska was 27.6 per 100,000 people, compared to 14.2 per 100,000 people nationwide. Number 28. Drug abuse is also a major problem in Alaska. It ranks in the top 10 states for illicit drug use and leads the nation in rates of alcoholism. 38% of Alaskan men and 13% of Alaskan women are classified as binge drinkers, compared to national rates of 24.3% of men and 19.2% of women. When it comes to drugs, around 9% of Alaskans are so addicted that they need to enter rehab, though most won't choose or be able to afford to do so. Unfortunately, this leads to a lot of people in the state never getting the help they need. In 2024, Alaska had the second highest rate of drug overdose deaths in the country at 53 per 100,000 people, behind only West Virginia. Fact number 27. Most Alaskans either take vitamin D during the winter or use light therapy boxes to mimic the effect of sunlight on their body. Vitamin D is necessary because it's something the body naturally produces when exposed to the sun. This means people in Alaska cease producing it altogether for months in a row, and it's necessary for things like absorbing calcium and keeping bones healthy. The light therapy boxes, or lamps, are known as happy lights, and it can be enough for some people to stave off severe depression. Number 26. Alaska is widely considered the most outdoorsy state in America, despite the frigid climate. 81% of the population is involved in outdoor activities. While this is great for getting out and about, if your hobbies don't include hunting, fishing, and/or snow sports, you may be out of luck. According to new transplants, the relatively low and low-density population makes finding hobby groups for things you love a little difficult if they don't fit into those categories. Number 25. Alaska's State Fair is a pretty big deal. Over 300,000 other people attend, almost half the state's population. It's held in Palmer around late August and early September and is by far the state's largest event. The fair sets up an amusement park, carnival games, a concert series with plenty of famous musicians flying into town, vendors with native crafts, and most Alaskan of all, giant award-winning vegetables on display. Number 24. There's no end to the quirky, fun festivals Alaskans have come up with to bring the whole community together. The Bearpaw Festival features the Slippery Salmon Olympics. Relay teams race with an open soda bottle and dead salmon, passing them off to other team members until the race is completed. Fact 23. In the late fall, Alaskans will start chatting about termination dust. The term originates from when white snow would start to pile up on the tops of nearby mountains, signaling to Alaskan miners that it was time to pack up their things and start shutting down the mines for the season. The term became so embedded in Alaskan culture that to this day, people will have conversations about when the termination dust is likely to appear, how early or late it did appear, and what it might mean for the winter ahead. Fact number 22. Summer is ending when the top of the fireweed plant finally blooms. The pinkish-purplish fireweed plants, so named because they usually bloom in fire-affected landscapes, flower throughout the Alaskan summer and bloom from bottom to top, unlike most other plant species. So when the bloom finally reaches the top and starts to fade, Alaskans know their beautiful sunny summer is coming to a close. There's even a phrase that says when firewood turns to cotton, summer will soon be forgotten. Fact number 21. Just like termination dust and dying fireweed plants signal the beginning of winter, spring breakups often mean that summer is coming. This is when the surface ice on rivers like the Yukon breaks apart and starts to flow downriver. It's a pretty momentous event, and the ice that breaks apart can be so big that it leads to some destruction in the area, including downed trees. In fact, there's a festival called the Nenana Ice Classic, in which locals bet on the exact time that the Tanana River ice will break up and send a spruce into the water. Fact number 20. Travel and Leisure voted Anchorage the worst-dressed city in the United States. Locals didn't really care, because their daily fashion prioritizes retaining body heat rather than looking like they stepped off the cover of Vogue. Flannels and parkas may not be all the rage on the runways, but Alaskans care about dressing practically and comfortably for most, if not all, of the year. Number 19. Urban fishing is a real thing. Locals often stop off at Ship Creek, close to 2nd Avenue in Anchorage, to fish after work, especially during salmon runs. Though it's not considered one of the best fishing spots in the country, it's a nice way for city dwellers to relax and enjoy some nature-based activities during the day. Number 18. Life inside and outside of Anchorage can be very different. 40% of the state population is inside Anchorage, and Alaska's biggest city has plenty of entertainment, shopping, and dining options. Once you leave the city limits, life can get a lot more rugged. To give you an idea of how different the rest of Alaska is, while Anchorage has a population of around 283,000 in 2025, the two next biggest cities, Fairbanks and Juneau, barely have over 30,000 people each. That's not even considered a city in the rest of the US. Residents often ask newcomers if they're moving to Anchorage or the bush, i.e., the 80% of settlements only accessible by boat or plane. Fact number 17. Some people in Alaska, especially those in the bush, really do still live off the land. That's because a high percentage of Alaskans, almost 20%, live in what are classified as frontier and remote areas, or, fittingly, far areas. This means it's more than an hour's commute away from the nearest population center of 50,000 people. That's compared to 3.9% of the US population at large living in such areas. Fact number 16. Alaska has communities called fish camps, annual temporary settlements where people from interior villages will move and spend their summer fishing, mostly for salmon. This is to feed themselves, their sled dogs, and sell the extra catch for profit, either whole or cured. The practice of going to fish camps and learning traditional skills from family members is an Alaskan native tradition. It's cultivated over generations to pass on knowledge about the land, its wildlife, native culture, and how to care for and live off the environment. Unfortunately, due to failing salmon runs in the early 2020s, fishing has been severely restricted or banned in many parts of the river, leaving these communities in distress. Fact number 15. Another interesting fact about life in Alaska is the actual use of sled dogs for work and transportation in Alaskan villages, to the point where sled dogs outnumber people in some places. This is especially true in places along the Iditarod Trail. In some remote parts of the state, sled dogs are not only man's best friend, but also man's only way to really get around for most of the year. The dogs used for sledding are usually a hardy mix of Malamutes, Huskies, and other winter weather breeds with double-coated fur, allowing them to thrive in the Alaskan winter and wilderness. Number 14. The other way of getting around in the remote Alaskan wilderness in wintertime is by snowmobile or snow machines. Many Alaskans rely on snow machines for so many critical tasks during the winter that to call it a snowmobile associated with a leisurely, fun activity seems wrong. If you're from out of town, you can still call it a snowmobile and people will know what you mean, but they will know you're an out-of-towner. Number 13. Residents who don't want to wander around in the Alaskan winter and don't like winter sports better enjoy being inside their homes almost 24/7 during the winter months. One new resident of Alaska who moved to the state in October describes how she met loads of her very kind neighbors in May. In her words, you may truly never see 80% of your neighbors outside their houses until after the snow melts. Fact number 12. Summer is the non-hibernation season for bears, so it's advisable to hike with bear spray. Most of the locals have a can when they head out into the wilderness because the last thing you want to do is underestimate the presence of bears in a state that has 140,000 of them. The sprays aren't meant to cause any long-term damage to the bears. They usually have red pepper extract, known as capsaicin, which will temporarily stop and incapacitate a bear, but leave it otherwise unharmed. Fact number 11. Some of the wildlife that is harmed on the road ends up becoming the property of the state. Some 800 to 1,000 moose die annually on Alaskan roads as high-speed highways cut through prime moose territory. In the 1970s, the state had an idea. It didn't make sense to let tens of thousands of pounds of edible meat go to waste when many Alaskans were struggling. So now, the state expects citizens who crash into big game animals, or troopers who find them dead on the side of the road, to report them to the state. After that, the animal will be butchered and most likely distributed to charity organizations. Fact number 10. Alaska has its own Big Mac. Called the Denali Mac, it's only available in McDonald's stores throughout Alaska. The Denali Mac is pretty similar to the traditional Big Mac, with the exception that it uses 2 quarter-pound beef patties instead of the regular small patties, and more sauce than your average McDonald's burger. This makes the Denali Mac a whopping 880 calories, perfect for putting some fat on you to keep you warm for the Alaskan winter. Fact number 9. Despite Alaska being a solidly red state voting-wise, it was one of the first to legalize marijuana on February 24, 2015, right after Colorado and Washington. According to Statista, Alaska ranks 4th nationwide in marijuana use, with 32.45% of residents having smoked weed within the last year, designated as 2022 by the study. High rates of weed use are partly a result of Alaska's rather more libertarian than conservative leanings. Fact number 8. The land of Alaska might be sparsely populated, but depending on where you live, your house may not be. Finding housing is a real problem in Alaska. Housing prices are high, most of the land is owned by the federal government and can't be developed, and it's hard to build in general. That means that people can tend to cram into housing that's inadequate for their family. The Alaska Housing Finance Corporation found that over half of Alaskan households in the rural parts of the state are overcrowded. Fact number 7, Alaska has a brain drain problem. In 2025, the Alaska Department of Labor and Workforce Development reported that more people moved out of Alaska than moved in for the 12th year in a row. What makes the issue of immigration worse is that most people moving out tend to be working-age adults. Meanwhile, many of those moving in are retirees or only coming in temporarily. Fact number 6. Outside of oil, gas, and construction, most careers in Alaska don't offer much in terms of advancement or progress. That's not to say you can't find well-paying jobs in other sectors, but people who want to move up the ladder or specialize may find it hard to do in a statewide market of just 740,000 people. Fact number 5. The Alaskan economy is very dependent on resources, from oil and gas to fishing and timber. This provides plenty of relatively well-paying jobs to locals and incoming workers, but it also means the state's economy can slide up and down a lot depending on how the market for these products is doing. Number 4, some Alaskans try to save money by living in what's called a dry cabin. This cabin functions more or less like a normal house, with the exception that it has no running water or plumbing. So that means no well, waste disposal, internal faucets, or septic system. Many places in Alaska have such thick permafrost that digging to install wells or septic systems is almost impossible, leading to the existence of so many dry cabins within the state. Not to mention, pipes can easily freeze and burst in the harsh winters. The upside is that dry cabins are on average cheaper to rent and buy than regular homes. There are downsides, however. Residents have to either haul water jugs, collect rainwater, or set up a whole water delivery and filtration system, or all three. Number 3. Hunting isn't just a sport in Alaska. Many people living in remote areas legitimately hunt to eat, bringing down a couple of large game animals to fill up their freezer for the winter. According to Alaska Fish and Game data, 25% of Alaskans in general hunt, but in rural areas, 79 to 92% of households hunt for subsistence. Fact number 2, once you live in Alaska, everywhere else will feel crowded and dirty. It's a common observation among those who have lived in the state for a few years, or even more so for their whole lives, that visiting family in the contiguous 48 US states is often a type of culture shock. Cities like Chicago, Los Angeles, or even relatively small lower 48 cities can feel incredibly crowded, dirty, and removed from nature. And finally, fact number 1. Alaska has a horrific mosquito problem. You may not expect to find clouds and swarms of mosquitoes this far north, but those who try to do anything outside during the summer know their statewide nightmare very well. Alaska is made up of over 14% water, and the many wetlands make perfect breeding grounds for blood-sucking mosquitoes. There are 35 species found within Alaska, but the most common is, perhaps unsurprisingly, the Alaskan mosquito, known for its aggressiveness. Locals prepare with repellent, clothing protection, and putting in screens everywhere they can, but somehow it isn't enough. Mosquito bites are just part of living in Alaska. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you want to see more videos like this, then please consider subscribing and turn on notifications. It really does make a difference. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time on MapPack.